Hello out there. My usual excitement to welcome you to another episode in our series, Cross Cultural Experiences. Now, people who have been watching this program, you know that I invite somebody who is my guest, and I'll play the role, of course, the host. And then we exchange ideas, or the person tells us the story about his or her experience in a culture that is totally different from his or hers. And more importantly, what did the person learn from that experience? From time to time, and today is one of those exceptions, where I talk about my own experience. So I play the role of guests as well as that of a host. Okay, so today I will share my experience in a country called Togo. Togo, for those of you who are not aware where it is located, is in West Africa. Today, I think it's about 9 point something million people. Now, when I'm at the time I visited, it was probably 4 million or so thereabouts. But that's not the main issue right now. The main issue was that I was one of the journalists. I was still active in journalism from Nigeria, invited to Togo by the president himself, a man called Gnassingbe Eyadema, one of Africa's brutal dictators. So I think on the ranking, of dictators, I think the only person who was probably ranked higher, who ranked higher than him was a man called Mobutu Sese Seko Mbendu Wazabanga of Zaire, what it was called, Congo today. All right, so we were invited to cover an event. I will tell you about that event, the confusion that arose in our minds, with some other journalists who covered that event. And so we traveled to Togo. Togo is not very far from Nigeria. I'm sure flying time, I think it was like 22 minutes, 25 minutes. And we were taken there in the brand new jet, flown by some French pilots and whoever. I don't think dictators like their own people to fly them so that they go crashing there. So we had all white people, as our beck and call. And the moment we stepped we were just giving, champagne to drink. It was a celebration. Okay. All that is just beside the point. I'm just setting the stage. So we arrived in Togo. Togo gained independence, just like so many, Francophone countries in 1960. So Independence Day was April 27, 1960. But this man called Gnassingbe Eyadema, if you know African history, if you know the history of coup d'etat in Africa, it was about the first person who carried out a successful coup d'etat when he killed, I think, President Sylvanus Olympio, on the steps of the parliament. So he came to power in 1963. Remember, he came to power in 1963, January 1963. Independence Day, April 27, 1960. All right. And the guy served, I think he served for some 38 years or so. Dictators stay in power till they die. That's what happens. So between 1967 and 2005, he was the president. Okay. So my question to you is this: do you live in a dictatorship? Do you know of a country that is under a dictatorship? What do you do as a human being in a situation where probably the country is moving towards a dictatorship? What do you do? Do you just fold your arms and say, "Oh, it's not my business. I'm not a politician. I'm not in power. I'm not this or that"? Is that what you do? Listen to my story, if that is your attitude. And so we arrived in Lome. At that time, I think there were only two big hotels. And so this guy was from the kindness of his heart, he put us in Nigerian journalists. We were about 10, no, 11 or 12 selected. So we arrived in Togo, 2 prominent hotels. So out of curiosity, I was asking, why are these hotels, why do they have such unique names? One of them was Hotel Sarakawa. That's the name of the hotel. I believe it's still there. Hotel Sarakawa. I said, why is it a cultural thing? I said, okay. Now, before I get to the answer, listen to this other one. The other more modern hotel at that time was called Hotel of the 2nd of February. Isn't that unique? Hotel de Février, forget that, please pardon my French pronunciation. Hotel of the 2nd of February. So I found it unique. I mean, why would you build a hotel and then give it that name? 25th December, 11th of October. Hotel de Février, 2nd of February. So it was explained to me that on the 2nd of February, 2nd of February, at some point, there was a plane crash or whatever it was. I think the plane crash itself was in January of 1974. But how they turned it to be Hotel of the 2nd of February, I can't say, but this is what I was told. So there was a plane crash. The president was, was flying. He was there. He was the only person who survived. 6 other people who were with him perished. Nobody knew how he was the only person who survived. Actually survived with minor bruises. Other guys perished. And so they turned it around because of dictatorship to say that, whoa, now this is the president. Nothing can kill him, not even a plane crash. Didn't you see how other people died? So he survived. So that hotel was called Hotel of the 2nd of February. So I said, okay, now we've dealt with the dates. How about Sarakawa? Oh, that plane crash was near a village called Sarakawa. Village of Sarakawa in northern Kenya. Not Kenya, Togo. So a hotel was named after the day of the crash. The other hotel was named what? Near the village where it happened. We're talking about dictatorship because dictators now have more prominence than their own countries. So you hear about North Korea. You don't know about North Korea, you know about Kim Jong-un. In those days, Mobutu Sese Seko Mbendu was a banker. As the person you knew next to nothing. About Zaire. The only thing we knew was during this, I think, 1974 World Cup. They went there and then, was it Brazil that beat them 9-0? They were just collecting goals. Well, that's the only time we knew about. But every time you mentioned the country, you don't know so much. Rather, you know much about who? The dictator. So that was that about the name. How curious it was. So having moved on from my curiosity, so we had the incident, or the event, sorry, not the incident, the event at I think it was the stadium, the biggest, I think that was the only one that they had at that time, big stadium. Another thing that occurred to me as I was looking at, almost all the dictators in Africa were there, led by Mobutu Sese Seko. All of them. They had come to show support to their own, who? Their brother dictator. But then all the people wore, the shirts, fabric that had the emblem, the picture of the president blazoned all over the place. Different colors representing each of the provinces. But you needed to have it, wear it front and back. The only one that did not have the the image of the president, had the image of a woman. I said, no, who is this woman? Oh, that's the president's mom. Okay, he so loved his mom, so he made an exception. We're still talking about dictatorship. And so it was well choreographed that they will mention Eyadema on this side. These people take it. Oh, it was well organized. You would think it meant some kind of Hollywood razzmatazz. It was so nicely worked out. I said, okay, dictatorship. All right. Then in the evening, we were now having, we were invited to dinner, large. Everybody was there. Who was who there? Hey, the champagne they served, I had never tasted that champagne before. I have not tasted it since then. Special. Where they got it from, I don't know. All of us were enjoying ourselves. And everybody had a bottle, not just something for you to taste and whatever. No. Everybody had a bottle of that champagne. And then they moved in the cake. I have never seen that kind of cake. I am not exaggerating. It should be like 7 feet or 9 feet. They are tall, and probably about another 5 to 7 feet, in circumference or diameter. There were, I think, about 12 people pushing the cake. You've never seen this kind of thing before. Pushing it, not one person. The chef, of course, all white, pushing that cake. They were now, and then I think it was Chalamona, that musician. The music was Bon anniversaire, Eyadema, happy anniversary, Eyadema. Remember, Independence Day was what? April 27, 1960. The man came to power January 13, 1967. The born anniversary was January 13, 1967, when he came to power, not Independence Day at all. So in the Togo of that time, the time the president came to power had surpassed, it was now celebrated much more than Independence Day. Independence Day, nobody talked about it. It was when the president came to power. That was now the in thing. That was the big celebration. Bon anniversaire, Eyadema. We were all singing. This thing happened decades ago, but I still remember it as though it just happened last night. All right. So that one got finished. And then everybody was making merry. The president made his speech. All his co-dictators were now clapping, celebrating him. It was a wonderful occasion, I'll tell you. Okay. Now here is another juicy part of it. We were journalists, we were moving around, interviewing people, blah, 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 blah. So when we got back to Nigeria, I wrote my story, the feature story for the Vanguard newspaper, where I used to work. So, of course, the ambassador, the Togolese ambassador to Nigeria, then was called a man called a big guy, and his name kind of resonated with how big he was. He was called Tete Kpofoli Agbenoza. You can imagine Tete Kpofoli Agbenoza. He was huge, almost as big as the cake. No, I'm joking. But he was a very nice guy. Very, very nice guy. Tete Kpofoli Agbenoza. I remember him. I don't know where he is right now. So he called me after the thing was published. My feature story was published in Nigeria Vanguard newspaper. And I said, Ambassador, you read my story? Oh, yeah, I read your story. It was nice. I said, oh, okay. Journalists, we are trained, to get it right, and then put ourselves away from what we are doing. But he said, wait a minute, Uche, there's something wrong, just one thing. I said, one thing? But didn't you tell me it was nice? He said, no, there was one thing. I said, what was it? That I mentioned the president. I said, okay. Why wouldn't I mention the president? That was the person who was born anniversary himself, Eyadema. Okay. I said, so what was wrong with it? It says the name of the president. I said, did I spell it? Gnassingbe Eyadema, it was G something. It started with a G, but it was pronounced Gnassingbe. So maybe I missed something. They said, no, you didn't miss it. You got it. Oh, the spelling was right. I said, then why are you complaining if I got it right? It said that I used the name. I said, why is it? Why? What is? Please explain to me, Your Excellency. He said, in Togo, we do not publish journalists at Togo of that time. We do not publish the name of the president. We don't use the name. I said, so what do you do? Oh, we refer to him as le grand-père, the grandfather. Remember dictatorship? You can't even mention the name of the president. You had to call him le grand-père, the grandfather. Again, pardon my French pronunciation. So that was it. I said, oh, thank God I'm not in Togo. Otherwise, I would have been arrested and probably taken to court and jailed for not being disrespectful of the president because I used the name the way it is. I didn't call him the grandfather. So, Ambassador, I said, oh, Ambassador, you know what? My readers are in Nigeria, so they won't even understand the grandfather. They will not understand it. That's why I had to. He said, okay, that was all. That was all. And so life went on. Now, why am I sharing this experience? Remember how I started it? Do you live in a dictatorship? When you're looking at your country, is it coming towards a dictatorship? So what do? Do you just fold your arms and say, mm-mm? So that experience taught me, because this program is about what did you learn from your experience. That experience taught me that you should never fold your arms and say it's the other people's problem, because it will be your problem. Because when the dictators come, they take over everything. Look at Eyadema. We were celebrating the day he came to power, not the Independence Day. Now, I must qualify it. His son is the president. Huh? That's dictatorship. He handed over to he died and the son took over. But I understand right now they no longer celebrate when the president was, when Eyadema himself, the big one, died. But you can see what he did. He now personified the state, everything about the state beneath. He was the only person above the state. Even if when you were a shirt, you had to have not the map of the country, no, you had to have the image of the president. Now, I don't know what went on because people were just disappearing left, right, and center in Togo as at that time. So you could not challenge the president. Now, the other thing is this, assuming you were part of the people who were, enjoying the benefits of knowing the president or being very close to the president, you better remain close to the president and very loyal to the president. Because the moment you disagree with that dictator, number one, you're dead, or you just leave your own country for your own dear life. Why? Because you now know a lot. It is not in the interest of the dictator to have your life. So you are like the proverbial person who is riding the back of the tiger. And as the saying goes, when you ride on the back of the tiger, you end up being the dinner. That is dictatorship. So let me just round it up, how I started it, that if you live in a dictatorship or you are watching your country moving towards a dictatorship, that is not the time to do what? Fold your hand. Whatever it is that you can do with the rest of the people, just to make sure that you don't have dictators, ruling the country, because everything becomes at the beck and call of the dictator. And that's it. Country is gone. And those dictators, they know how to stay in power for a very long time. All over Africa, we still have them today. People who have been there for, I don't know how long. Eyadema stayed 38 years before he died. Okay. So that's my story for this episode. And remember that if you want to join us, you can get in touch with me, crossculturalexperiences@gmail.com. Remember the S? cross-cultural experiences, at gmail.com. Get in touch, and then I can bring you here, and then we share ideas, or we share your story, and then more importantly, what did you learn from it? For me, that story about Togo, about Bonanivese, Eyadema, with Tete Tofuli Agbenoza, and the president himself, Hotel Sarakawa, Hotel de Deux Février, all those things, they tell me that life under a dictatorship is no life. All right? Enjoy yourself. And then that's my message. And like I said, if you want to join me for this, just get in touch, and everything will be well. Thank you very much. And I hope Togo is not what it was when I visited it. But I'm hearing that it might even be worse. Bye.